And this is after I'd had a few people had like looked at it in the Google Doc, and I had looked at it in the Google Doc a couple of times and formatted it into a PDF so that it could get printed. And I opened the book, and the whole first paragraph of the second chapter is just not there. And I was like, where did it go? How long has this been gone? And so I'm like going through the history on my Google Doc, and it had been gone for a long time. Like I had to go back so far to find it. And I'm like, people read this and no one told me, why does chapter 2 start like that? It doesn't make sense. So that was definitely a moment where I was like, okay, this still needs some work, clearly.
Yeah, and beta readers and critique partners are super useful, and everyone should work their network like you have.
Yeah, definitely. Make everybody that you know read your work, because the more people who look at it and tell you what's confusing or what doesn't work is like the better.
Yeah. So I always like to finish off with something a little bit lighter, but often sometimes a difficult subject. What would you say is your favorite book?
Oh man, this question is always so hard. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've read so many books this year that have sort of become like I'm like right now they feel like my favorite, even though I feel like I just read them, so I don't know if they count yet as a favorite. But can I list a couple maybe?
Oh yes, no, please. Most of my guests use that cop out, and it's usually better because I like seeing the depth of your interest.
Okay, cool.
It's almost a trick question asking for one, but
Yeah, because I'm just like, oh, but there's so many good ones. Because there's like the classics, like of course I love Harry Potter, but one that I actually read it for a fiction class in undergrad, was Gone Girl, and I was just like blown away by how good it was, because that was sort of a genre I'd never really dipped into, was like that sort of like thriller type story. So I love that one. And earlier this year I read The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which was a difficult read for many reasons. The subject matter, but then also just his style of prose was like nothing I'd ever read before, and so it was challenging to get through, but I felt like I learned a lot from reading that. And I love a good apocalypse story about like a dad and a child. Like I love that. So that's really good. And I think one other one, just to sort of round out my interests, that I read this year also was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Because first of all, as far as LGBT fiction goes, I felt like it just resonated and felt very real. And the characters felt like 15-year-olds, it's a hard age to capture. The characters I'm writing right now are 13, and it's really hard to get back into that headspace of like what you were like as a young teen and how you talked without sounding sort of cliched or like you're trying too hard. But that book just did it so well, and I read it in like 2 days because I didn't want to put it down. So I feel like that's always the mark of a good story if I can't stop reading it. So yeah, those are the three that currently I would say are some of my favorites.
yeah, and those are really good books. I can personally say Gone Girl is fantastic. Just a really good piece of thriller that doesn't rely on a lot of the other stuff that thrillers often rely on.
Mm-hmm.
It messes with you, and it's really great. So, do you have I guess the last thing, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Any other advice you'd like to give anybody while I still have you?
I think my biggest thing that I would say as like a piece of advice is the thing that I've learned from Nano would be just to not get caught up in editing before you finish. That's my biggest piece of advice. If you want to finish something, just keep going and be okay with it being bad. Just because you'll never get to a point where it can be good if you don't let it be bad first and just finish it. So that I think would be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, I really love talking to you. You know, as I love talking with all my guests, and I hope that your continued nano works and you cross the finish line. And I hope that the people who are listening who are also trying to cross that finish line will take some of your advice to heart, and hopefully it'll help them get there too.
Yeah, I wish everyone luck who's going through the struggle with me right now.
Yeah, I was going to, but I just grad school.
Yeah.
All right, so I will hopefully maybe we'll talk again. Maybe if you keep me updated on. And keep us updated on the status of your writing, and if you ever get that novel published or your current novel published, maybe we can bring you back on. We can talk some more.
Definitely, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All my sadness banished, it's madness, it's vanished and never coming back.
Okay, guys, so we are back from the interview. As always, you can find links to Audrey's work. And some of the books that Audrey mentioned in the interview on the blog in the show notes. But now, I have decided that rather than cover the bestsellers and have this rigid sort of news schedule that I've had in the past, we're going to have some stuff that we're all bringing to the table each episode. And I know that this time, Brigid and Celia both have things they want to talk about. And I think Brigid has some newsletters.
Yeah. So there's a couple of newsletters that I'm subscribed to. One of them, the first one is called Authors Publish Magazine. That's at authorspublish.com, and we'll put a link down to that in the show notes. And it's a completely free online magazine, more like a email like weekly email blast sort of thing, really. And basically what they do is they just send you links to publishers that are currently accepting submissions, and occasionally articles that would be useful. Like there's one on their front page right now called How to Get Your Writing Published in 2018, so things like that. And they their principles are that they're only going to share publishers with no submission fees, so that could be useful to you guys who maybe can't quite swing those hefty submission fees that some journals and publishers have. Everything they share is open to writers from all around the world, so you don't have to worry about people who only publish in the U.S., people who only publish in the U.K., or whatever country. And they research and verify all of the publishers they list, so you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, they're not super annoying with their emails, so that's nice. It's just like a weekly email blast, and it's totally free. And the second one that I am subscribed to is, it's called Freedom with Writing. That's freedomwithwriting.com. And again, free email newsletter. And yeah, basically they send you links to places where you can find writing jobs, like people who are looking for freelance writers maybe, or people who are looking for who are looking for material for an anthology or something, things like that. And they also share articles on how to get published, how to become a successful freelance writer. So that one's pretty cool too. They've shared some interesting stuff since I've been subscribed to them. And yeah, that's what I've got. All you have to do is put in your email address. So.
Yeah, those are really cool. Those are really a good resource for writers, the people who are doing some of what we do, but they curate a lot more. And it helps you separate the wheat from the chaff with your submissions.
Absolutely.
And then Celia, I believe, has a contest she wanted to propose.
Mm-hmm. And it is perhaps less official than one would initially assume, but I follow Melissa Goodrich on Twitter. She is the author of Daughters of Monsters, Stories of Humans and Animals in Magical Peril. And on her feed the other day, I saw her propose a rejections contest. And I've heard of something like this before. It is when a group of writers who know each other pretty well get together and agree at the beginning of the year, much like it is now, to see how many rejections they can get over the course of a year. And maybe that doesn't sound particularly appealing. I know for a fact that getting rejections is, pardon my French, a bitch. But I do think that a rejections contest proposes and motivates individual writers to really, really put themselves out there. And so with Brigid and Dan, I was going to propose that over the course of this podcast, we just check in with each other now and then and see, where have we submitted and how many rejections do we have? And then maybe when the year comes to an end, depending on how good or bad 2018 is, I don't know, maybe we can do a little something for whoever has the most rejections.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah,
I don't know how much. You go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good. If our listeners want to get in and tweet us how many rejections they have at certain parts of the year, I think that would be interesting too.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, we can do a rejection update every couple months or so, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'll be planning on submitting this year, but we'll see what happens.
Well, if nothing else, this will make you submit. There you go.
There you go. Now I have to write something. Damn it. You conned me. I have to put work into it.
Solve my writing puzzle. Okay, it's been kind of a dead news cycle recently with when it comes to writing. So I don't really have a whole lot with that end of things. I usually try to find anything for awards that got put out or things like that, but there really isn't a whole lot happening right now. I think there might be some coming up soon. But so what I want to do is my last thing is I want to talk about a few literary magazines that I found that are going to be accepting submissions during the time period between this episode and the next. As always, we try to find mags that don't require any fee, contests like that, unless they're really interesting or big name thing. And we're try to, if there's a theme for the episode, we'll try to keep them on theme. We'll try to mix poetry, that kind of thing. And it won't always be me. I know Brigid and Celia are plugged into things because they're submitting, like I said, so sometimes they'll have stuff to submit as well and talk about as well. So, the first one I found is actually kind of interesting, especially for me. It is from Fem Rag Lit Mag. A low-budget feminist garbage zine that chronicles incidents of casual misogyny and the normalization of casually abusive behaviors women experience daily. It's all-inclusive and gives a platform to female, non-married, or non-binary gender-conforming artists. Their first volume came out in May of 2017 and was called Bless My Hairy Butt. The next volume will be coming out this year. Will be titled Men Are Cancelled.
Oh, I love this already.
I love that.
It's described. This is the pet project of writer and humorist Diddle Nab, and it is it's described as, "Sorry, men, you are done. It's been cool and it's been real, but men are cancelled." But Diddle, isn't that divisive? No, it's actually a really kind way of describing the situation. Name one single man who isn't trash. I'll wait. But what about Tom Hanks? Tom Hanks literally murdered 18 people. Try again, sweetie.
What?
If you want to submit to the Men Are Cancelled journal, an edition of Fem Rag Lit Mag, your work should be no longer than 1,000 words and explore themes of sex and body shaming, body dysmorphia, and the casual misogyny that shapes our lives.
or not.
Who is